The notification came through at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. My husband was in the shower. His phone was face up on the nightstand, and I wasn't snooping. I was just reaching past it to turn off my lamp. But the screen lit up, and I read it anyway. I read it the way you read something you're not supposed to, in that half second before your brain catches up to your eyes. Can't stop thinking about last weekend. When are you going to tell her? The contact name was Rob W., someone I'd never heard of. I put the phone back. I turned off the lamp. I lay in the dark and listened to the water running, and I thought, maybe it's nothing. A misunderstanding. Rob W.'s a work friend dealing with something personal, and my husband has been counseling him through it. That's why I'd never heard of him. That's why it was almost midnight. That's why those words felt like they'd been printed directly onto the inside of my chest. He came out of the bathroom with a towel around his waist, smelling like cedar and steam, and I said, "Long day." He said it like he was asking Claster to me and kissed my temple, and within minutes his breathing deepened into sleep. I stayed awake until 3 a.m. His name was Lawrence. We'd been together 9 years, married for 6. We met at a friend's 4th of July party in Raleigh. He spilled a beer on my sandal and apologized 4 separate times, each time more elaborate than the last, until I finally laughed and told him he was going to have to buy me a drink to make it stop. He did. He bought me 2. He called the next morning and said he hadn't slept because he kept thinking about whether I'd had a good time. That was the man I married, the one who lost sleep over whether I'd had a good time. We had a house in Cary, a suburb of Raleigh that people always described as safe and quiet, in a tone that somehow managed to sound like an insult. We had a dog named Biscuit, a golden retriever with separation anxiety so severe he once ate an entire throw pillow while we were at dinner. We had a mortgage and a shared Google Calendar and a standing Friday night takeout tradition from the Thai place on Maynard. We did not have kids. That had been the source of some friction. Not between us, exactly, but around us. My mother-in-law, Vonda, brought it up at every family gathering with the subtlety of someone honking a horn in a library. My own mother stayed quieter about it, but I'd catch her looking in my midsection sometimes with an expression she thought she was hiding. We were fine. We were good. I thought we were good. I spent the next week watching. Not in an obvious way. Not in a way that changed how I acted or what I said. I made dinner on the nights I usually made dinner. I asked about his work trip to Charlotte. I laughed at the right moments during the shows we watched together, but I was paying attention in a way I hadn't been before, and once you start paying attention like that, you can't stop. Things that had seemed normal began to acquire small, hard edges. He'd started going to the gym in the evenings instead of the mornings. He said it was because of a new project at work that required earlier hours. Reasonable, totally reasonable, but I noticed he always showered there before coming home. He'd never done that before. His phone had a new angle. He'd always left it face up on the counter while cooking, while watching TV, while doing anything. Now it was face down, always, or tucked in his pocket. He'd gotten a wireless charger for his side of the bed and the phone sat on its screen down. He started talking about his coworker Bethany with a very specific kind of casualness, the kind where someone mentions a name too neutrally, like they've rehearsed the neutral. I kept these observations the way you keep receipts you're not sure you'll need. On a Sunday afternoon, when he was at a brewery thing with his college friends, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and my coffee, and I thought very carefully about what I knew and what I didn't know, and what I needed before I made any decision at all. What I knew, something was happening. What I didn't know, the shape of it, the timeline, how serious, who. What I needed, enough that there could be no denial. Not for him. I was past the point where I needed him to admit it. For myself. I needed it to be something I'd seen clearly, not something I'd suspected and spiraled over in the dark. I'm not by nature a vengeful person. I want to be honest about that. I'm 38 years old. I'm a project manager for a healthcare software company. I like crossword puzzles and running, and the first hour of Sunday mornings when the house is quiet and the light comes through the bedroom curtains at that low golden angle. I am not someone who fantasizes about dramatic confrontations or elaborate schemes. But I am someone who, when I decide to do something, does it completely. My best friend Tamsin had been suspicious before I was. She'd mentioned it once, about 5 months earlier, just a passing comment. Something like, "I don't know, he seems distracted lately, is everything okay?" And I'd brushed it off the way you brush off things that feel dangerous to look at directly. I didn't call her that Sunday. I wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Saying it out loud made it real and required action, and I wasn't ready for action. I was still in the information phase. Over the next 3 weeks, I learned the following. The name wasn't Rob W. from work. There was no Rob W. from work. It was a contact name he'd used to disguise a number, and the number, when I looked it up, belonged to someone named Bethany. The Bethany he'd been mentioning in that careful, over-neutral way. They had been meeting on the evenings he claimed to be at the gym. I didn't follow him. I didn't need to. I found a receipt in the pocket of a jacket he'd asked me to drop at the dry cleaner. Dinner for two at a restaurant on Glenwood Avenue, a nicer restaurant than we'd been to together in over a year. The date was stamped at the bottom. He told me that night he was working late. And the last thing, the thing that shifted something permanently inside me, a weekend coming up in 6 weeks. A cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains that I'd suggested we do for our anniversary in May. He'd said it was too slammed at work. Maybe we could push it to fall. I had agreed, a little disappointed, and filed it away. He had booked the same cabin, the same weekend, for a party of 2. I found the booking confirmation in his email, which I know sounds invasive, and maybe it was. But I want to say in my own defense that I had already found enough to know what I was looking at. I wasn't fishing. I was confirming. I closed the laptop. I poured the rest of my coffee down the drain. And then I sat very still for a long time because the grief was real and it deserved a moment. 9 years. The 4th of July party. The 2 beers. The phone call the next morning. I gave myself 45 minutes to feel it. Then I started thinking. The one thing I was certain of was this: I would not confront him. Not yet. Not the way my first instinct said to. Not by sending a text saying I know about Bethany and waiting for the scramble. That would give him control of the narrative. He could minimize, reframe, apologize strategically. He would say it wasn't what it looked like, that it was complicated, that he'd be meaning to talk to me. He would take my moment of discovery and make it about his feelings. I had worked too hard to hand that over. Here's what else I knew. Our anniversary was in 3 weeks. We'd already made vague plans to do something. Even after the cabin fell through, he'd mentioned dinner, something nice to make up for the postponed trip. His family had a tradition of celebrating big anniversaries with a party. Our mutual friends, our families, the full production. This year marked 7 years. His mother had been pushing for a party since January. I had smiled and said we'd think about it. I started thinking about it. I called Vonda, my mother-in-law, and told her I'd changed my mind. Yes, let's do the party. I know it's short notice, but I'll handle most of it. I just need the guest list and the venue she'd been eyeing. She was so delighted she cried a little on the phone. I also called a divorce attorney. Her name was Ms. Pemberton, and she had an office in downtown Raleigh and a reputation for being thorough. I kept that appointment to myself. What I did in the 3 weeks between that Sunday and the anniversary party. I met with Ms. Pemberton twice. I understood what I was entitled to, what the process looked like, what I needed to document. I was calm in both meetings in a way that surprised even me. She told me I was one of the most prepared clients she'd seen at this stage. I quietly moved 3 months of savings into an account in my name only. We'd always kept a joint account for household expenses and individual accounts for personal spending, so this wasn't suspicious. I transferred from mine, not from the joint. I ordered something online, a small, discreet thing. I put it in my bag and forgot about it until I needed it. I did not act any differently at home. This was the hardest part. Not the planning, not the attorney meetings, not even sitting with the knowledge every single day. The hardest part was Friday nights with the Thai takeout, watching a show together on the couch. and just being normal, laughing when something was funny, asking about his day, letting him put his arm around me and not going rigid. Tamsin could see something was wrong when I finally told her, 2 weeks in. She's known me since college. She can read my face the way some people read weather, by shifts in pressure that aren't visible to anyone else. I told her the basics. She was quiet for a long time. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Nothing yet," I said. "That's not like you." "I know." She looked at me a little sideways for the rest of the coffee, but she trusted me. That's the thing about Tamsin. She trusts me even when she doesn't understand me, and she's rarely sorry for it. The party was at a venue in North Hills, a private event room above a wine bar that Fonda had reserved. 40 people, our families, our closest friends, people who'd been at our wedding. Lawrence had helped send the invitations and had seemed genuinely touched by the whole thing, which told me something I won't name directly but which settled in my chest like a stone. The week before the party, he booked the Airbnb, the cabin. I knew the dates before he left for work the morning he did it, because I'd set up an alert. He was taking her away 6 days after our anniversary party. I want to say something here. For anyone who thinks I should have simply left, you're not wrong. I could have. I could have sat him down, told him I knew, and walked out. Quick, clean, minimal drama. I understand that argument, but I want you to understand mine. This was a man who had watched me lose a pregnancy 2 years earlier and held my hand through it, who had stood in front of 40 of these same people and made vows, who had lied to my face with his arm around me smelling like cedar and steam while I lay awake at 3 a.m. passing my own sanity. I was not interested in quiet. I was interested in true. The night of the party, I wore a green dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion. Not flashy, not over the top, just a dress that made me feel like myself. I got there 45 minutes early. I had a brief conversation with the venue manager and I set something up near the small stage area they used for speeches. It was subtle. It would not be noticed. Lawrence arrived with his brother 10 minutes before guests. He looked handsome and easy and completely at peace with himself, and the sight of that ease was, I will admit, clarifying. The party went the way anniversary parties go. Wine, appetizers, the particular warmth of people who love you, genuinely gathered in one room. His mother cried during the toast she gave, in a way that made me look at the floor. My father, who had driven up from Wilmington and who I had told 2 days earlier the entirety of what I knew, stood beside me with his hand on my shoulder most of the evening, saying nothing, because he is a man who knows when words are not the point. At 9 o'clock, Lawrence asked if he could say a few words. He was that kind of man, comfortable in a crowd, good at these moments. He took the little wireless mic and he was warm and funny and self-deprecating in the way that had charmed me once, a long time ago at a 4th of July party. He talked about the years. He talked about the dog. Biscuit got a laugh, always, and the house, and how he couldn't imagine the last 9 years with anyone else. He said I was the most steady person he'd ever known. He said he loved me. I let him finish. I walked up. He handed me the mic with a smile, the comfortable smile of someone who doesn't see it coming. I said 7 years is a long time, long enough to really know a person. I paused. Or to find out you don't. The room shifted, that particular silence that falls when something unexpected happens in a public space, everyone present at once, the way you can feel. I looked at him, not with anger. I want to be precise about this. I was not shaking. I was not crying. I looked at him the same way I'd looked at those receipts, at that screen, at Ms. Pemberton's desk, with clarity. I said, I know about Bethany. I know about the cabin in the Blue Ridge Mountains. I know about the contact you saved as Rob W. and the restaurant on Glenwood Avenue on March 14th. The room was completely silent. I've known for a month, I said. I wanted to wait until there were witnesses. I set the mic down on the edge of the stage. I picked up my clutch from the table nearest to me. I walked to my father, kissed his cheek, and said quietly, "Take care of Mom." He nodded. His eyes were bright. I walked out of the venue. My car was parked 2 blocks away. I had packed a bag 3 days earlier. It was in the trunk. I had a reservation at a hotel in downtown Raleigh for that night and a flight booked for the following morning, Charlotte to Denver, where my college roommate Veronica lived and had been telling me to visit for 2 years. I had taken 5 days off work. I had handled it. I want to be accurate about the walks of the car. It was a cool night for May, that particular Carolina spring air that's finally given up pretending to be winter. I could hear music from something happening 2 streets over. I felt the way you feel after a fever breaks, that strange lightness that isn't quite happiness but is the absolute absence of weight. I didn't cry until I was in the elevator of the hotel alone after midnight. Not from sadness, or not only from sadness, from the accumulated effort of the last month, from the relief of it being done, from grief for the real thing that had existed before the thing that replaced it. I cried for about 10 minutes. Then I washed my face, ordered room service, and watched something mindless on the hotel TV until I fell asleep. I found out later, through Tamsin, who stayed until the end and gave me a full account over the phone the next morning, that Lawrence had tried to speak after I left. He'd said it wasn't what it looked like. He'd said it was complicated. He'd said he'd been meaning to talk to me. 40 people heard him say it. His mother left the venue without speaking to him. She called me the following week, and that conversation was one of the harder ones. Because she was genuinely devastated, and she was also, in her way, a person I had loved. I told her I was sorry. She said she was sorrier. Miss Pemberton filed the papers the week I came back from Denver. Veronica made me hike a trail on my second morning there, despite my protests, and at the top there was a view of the Rockies that made me stand still for a long time with no thoughts at all, which, for someone who had been thinking hard for 6 weeks straight, was approximately the greatest gift I'd ever been given. We ate breakfast burritos from a place near her apartment every morning and stayed up too late talking, and at some point on the 4th day I realized that I had laughed genuinely, without calculating whether it looked right, for the first time in a month. On my last evening in Denver, sitting on Veronica's back porch with a glass of wine and the mountains still visible in the distance, she asked me if I had regrets. I thought about it honestly. No, I said, just the parts before. The divorce took 8 months. It was not simple, but it was not catastrophic. We divided what we had divided, and I kept the house by choice, and he moved to an apartment near downtown. Biscuit stayed with me, because I will contest that until my last breath, and because Lawrence, to his credit, did not fight it. I am writing this from the sunroom I'd always meant to make into an actual room but never got around to, which now has a reading chair and a lamp and a table just large enough for a coffee cup and a book. Biscuit is asleep on my feet. It is a Sunday morning, and the light is coming through at that low, golden angle I have always loved, and the house is quiet in the way that is entirely my own. I used to think that the hardest part of something like this was the discovery, the moment the floor gives way, but the discovery was only a moment. What comes after, the long, patient process of knowing what you know and deciding what to do with it, of keeping yourself intact while you figure it out, of walking out of a room full of people with your head level and your hands steady. That is the actual work. I did the work. I'm not writing this for sympathy, though I won't refuse it. I'm writing this because at 3 a.m., 7 months ago, I lay in the dark next to someone who was already somewhere else, and I thought, I can fall apart now, or I can think. I chose to think, and I want someone out there who is lying in that same dark, in that same terrible quiet, to know that thinking is a choice you're allowed to make. The light is very good this morning. My coffee is getting cold and I don't care. Biscuit has started snoring. It turns out that this, just this, is more than enough. There's a moment I keep coming back to, not the party, not the mic, not even the walk to my car afterward. It's the 45 minutes I gave myself at the kitchen table, the day I found that booking confirmation, the cabin, our anniversary weekend, her name. I could have screamed. I could have called him right then and unraveled everything in a single phone call. Part of me wanted to. But I sat still instead, and I let myself feel what was real. And then I made a choice about what kind of person I was going to be on the other side of this. That choice is the part nobody sees, doesn't make for a dramatic clip. But it's the only part that actually matters. Here's what I've come to understand. What happened to me didn't happen because Lawrence was some kind of monster. It happened because he made a series of small decisions, each one a little dishonest, a little convenient, a little easier than telling the truth. And those decisions compounded the way interest compounds, quietly and then all at once. That's how most betrayals work. Not one catastrophic choice, but 100 small ones that nobody names until the damage is already done. And on my side, something similar was true. I had been, for years, choosing comfort over clarity, choosing not to ask the question when the answer felt dangerous. That's not a character flaw. It's human. But it had its own cost, and part of what I was doing in those 6 weeks, the attorney meetings, the quiet savings transfer, the anniversary party I organized with my own hands, was paying it back, choosing clarity, finally, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. Tamsin asked me once, near the end of it all, whether I regretted waiting, whether I wished I'd just confronted him the night I saw that first message. I thought about it. I really did. The truth is that if I had confronted him that night, I would have had one conversation. Chaotic, emotional, his terms. Instead, I had 8 months of legal process that left me with a house, a fair settlement, and a clear record of exactly what had happened. Clarity is not cold. It is, in fact, one of the most loving things you can offer yourself. Veronica, who watched me hike a mountain in Denver while I was still technically in shock, told me something I've thought about since. She said the people who come through hard things intact are not the people who feel less. They're the people who feel it completely and then decide, very deliberately, what to do next. I believe her. I've lived it. What I know now, sitting in the sunroom with biscuits weight on my feet and the Sunday light doing its particular thing through the curtains, is this. The integrity I held on to during those 6 weeks, not retaliating, not lying, not becoming something I didn't recognize, that was not weakness. That was the architecture of who I wanted to be afterward. You cannot build a good life on the wreckage you created yourself. So I was careful about what I wrecked and what I didn't. The intelligence required in a moment like that is not cleverness. It's not strategy for its own sake. It's the discipline to slow down when every instinct says to accelerate. To ask, what is actually true here? What do I actually need? What will I be able to live with in 5 years? Those are not easy questions when your hands are shaking, but they are the only questions worth answering. And the endurance, that was the part I didn't know I had. 6 weeks of Friday night takeout and normal conversation and his arm around my shoulders, knowing what I knew. If you'd asked me before whether I was capable of that, I would have said no. I would have been wrong. We are almost always more capable than we believe, and we almost never find that out until something requires it of us. I didn't come through this because I'm exceptional. I came through it because I decided, on a Tuesday night at 3 a.m., that I was not going to let the worst thing that had happened to me also be the thing that broke me. That decision is available to anyone.